Good morning, friends, and welcome back to another video. Today, I wanted to chat all about Banff National Park again and share some things that I would tell somebody that is first coming to Banff and just starting to plan their trip, things that I think they should know before coming, and things about Banff that might be helpful to know while they're in the midst of planning their trip and visiting. The things I want to chat about are mostly focused on not winter season. Peak season in Banff is usually between like June to September, I would say, because that is the best weather, all of the lakes are thawed, things like that. So this is more focused on like spring, summer, fall, and not so much winter, because winter has totally different activities, different weather conditions, things like that. Whereas a lot of the activities you do in the spring, summer, fall, and a lot of visitors visit during that time. So yeah, this is more spring, summer, fall focused is what I'm trying to say. I am just going to jump straight into it so that we can cover absolutely everything. And of course, if you have any questions, leave them below and I will try to get back to them as fast as I can. So the first thing to know about visiting Banff is that Moraine Lake is closed for a period of the year. So it is closed during that winter season. Usually Moraine Lake is open from June 1st to the weekend of Canadian Thanksgiving. So if you are visiting during the winter time, you most likely will not be visiting Moraine Lake unless you have avalanche safety training and you like cross-country ski or hike all the way up the 14-kilometer road or whatever it is through winter conditions, and there's no cell service and it's not really recommended. So Moraine Lake is not really accessible during the winter time. The next thing to know when planning your trip is that all of the popular things that you see on social media and websites and things like that, they book up super far in advance. So if you are planning a trip to Banff, I would recommend finding out all of the dates that tickets are released and making sure you book in as far in advance as possible. A lot of things in Banff are free, so the things that require booking in advance, there's not as many. So basically everybody tries to go see these things. So this would be things like the Parks Canada shuttle bus to Moraine Lake and things like the Banff gondola, camping, the cruise on Lake Minnewanka, and things like that. The Lake Minnewanka cruise might not sell out, but it's hard to say. It depends on the season. So I would just make sure you know what you want to do in advance and book everything in advance to make sure that your trip can go as smoothly as possible. If you're curious about booking tickets to Moraine Lake through the Parks Canada shuttle bus, I made a whole video talking about how to actually do that and navigate the website and what to know in advance for that. And then I also made a different video with all of the different ways to get to Moraine Lake. So you can also check that video out too if you are wanting to visit Moraine Lake and confused about all the options that you can take to get there. Next thing to know, parking can be stressful. Banff National Park, if you have a car, you are going to have the most freedom to see everything. But because of this, a lot of people have a car and parking can be so stressful because the parking lots aren't actually that big depending on where you are going. So for example, the parking lot at Bow Lake gets so busy. Last summer, it was basically one lane in / out, like the same lane to go in as it is to take out. And there's cars lined on either side of the road that you can't pull out. So basically, if you meet a car like this on the road, one of you has to back up. And if there is that added element of you're towing a boat or towing a car or you're in a motorhome, I would not even try if you are driving up and the parking lot is super busy, because like one of you has to back up and it could be you because the road is really long and it's just a mess. So parking can be really stressful. Parking at Johnston Canyon fills up like really fast, really early. Parking at Lake Louise throughout the day, even though it's a larger lot at those places, it can get full. Pado Lake I've tried to go to and it's been full depending on the time of day. So that kind of leads into my next thing to know, which is to always have a backup plan and a plan like A, B, C, because if you have a nicely laid out itinerary of where you want to go, but then you can't actually park, you're going to have to either drive around until somebody leaves, but other people might also be doing that, or if the parking lot is being monitored by Parks Canada, they might not let you do that. And then you have to either change your whole plan or just not go see that place. So always have a fluid plan and always prioritize the things that you want to absolutely see first as either your very first stop, or have some flexibility at the end of your day to circle back to some of these places, because a lot of the times when people start turning in for dinner or the sun sets super late, well, not super late, but a lot later in the day in the summertime, but people have already kind of turned in. They're starting to have their campfires and things like that. The crowds can be a lot less in the evening. So at like 8, 9 p.m., you could circle back and see if there's any parking there if you have some flexible time in your day, just so that you don't miss seeing anything that you absolutely want to see. And also, the lighting will be better for photos at that time of day. The light gets really harsh in midday, so your photos might not turn out as you were hoping. They'll still be beautiful either way because Banff is just so hard to take a bad photo. It's so beautiful. Okay, the next thing to know when visiting Banff National Park is that you will need a Canadian National Parks Pass to stop in any Canadian National Park. So the Canadian National Parks that you might be visiting on your trip would obviously be Banff National Park, and then potentially you'll be heading over to Jasper National Park, maybe Yoho National Park in BC, Kootenay National Park. If you're flying into Edmonton, maybe you'll take a little day trip out to Elk Island National Park. All of those national parks need a Canadian National Parks Pass, but let's say you're staying for a week. If you buy one for the week, your National Parks Pass works in all of the national parks. So as long as you have a National Parks Pass, you can go to any Canadian national park. So like you could start in Banff National Park for the day and in Jasper National Park for the day, and your park pass works in all national parks. You can get this when you're pulling up to, like, let's say Banff National Park. There's toll booths on the road that you can stop at, and they can help you decide which length of pass to buy. Or you can go to the visitor center as soon as you arrive in Banff National Park, because you technically need your pass by that point, and they can help you there as well. Or you can also buy it online, but if you don't know what you're going to want to buy, I would just buy it when you are driving up to Banff National Park. You might have to wait in line, but I mean, that's just how it goes in the summertime. And then just know, if you were planning to visit Kananaskis, which is a provincial park, not a national park, you do need a different pass, and that is a digital pass that you can buy online. So Kananaskis is a separate pass. So if you're going to be stopping at Kananaskis, make sure you buy your pass before you go online, because there's no service in Kananaskis, so you need to buy it before you get there, or stop in at the visitor center and they can help you buy that as well. And it's only online. So even if you go to the visitor center, they're just going to help you buy it online. Okay, another thing to know is that Banff can be a very expensive place to visit. Hotels are going to be expensive, even if they're not that nice. A cheaper place to stay is usually Canmore, but even Canmore now has been getting a little bit more expensive, I've noticed. So some people might choose to stay in Calgary and do the hour drive in and out every day, which you're already going to be doing a lot of driving in Banff. But I mean, if that's what you want to do, that is an option, but you will be paying for gas to get in and out, as well as time. And a lot of people do that, and a lot of Calgarians take day trips. So there might be a lot of traffic going in and out of Banff every morning, but that is an option. Some people stay in Field, BC, which is kind of close by to Banff as well. Some people stay in Golden, but that is also quite a, well, not quite a drive, but it is a little bit of a drive to get in and out every day, especially depending on what you want to do. Camping is an option if you have the equipment. That can be a cheaper option. And also Parks Canada has some equipped camping spots, so they provide you with everything you'll need, and you just show up and can camp with all of their gear, so you don't have to worry about it. So you could look into that, or you could even look into staying in the town of Cochrane and driving in and out every day, but also cost of gas, things like that, drive time. It's really up to you, but it really depends on what your priorities are, I guess. So yeah, Banff is expensive. If you want a video on some cheaper alternatives to how to save money in Banff, let me know. But one way to save money is, if you are landing in Calgary, I would recommend, or like wherever you're landing, because there is no airport in Banff. You're going to be flying into somewhere else or driving in from somewhere else. I would hit up the grocery store and just grab some snacks before you leave those areas, because snacks at the grocery store in Banff and Canmore, they can be a little bit more expensive. So if you can hit up like a Costco or a Superstore before you arrive and just get some snacks and nice things to eat, I would recommend that. If you have access to a fridge, I would get groceries, things like that. Okay, another thing to know that it seems like a lot of people I talk to don't realize is that Lake Louise is actually like a 45-minute drive from downtown Banff. So a lot of these stops are like quite spread out from each other and take a lot of driving to get to. So I would recommend when you're planning your trip to look at Google Maps and check out the driving times and then add a little bit of time, because if you're visiting during peak season, it is going to be busy and it might take a little bit longer to drive. Okay, another thing to know is that cell service and data are not available in some spots. So if you have Google Maps or like you're trying to navigate or look things up, you might not be able to in some spots. And the two most popular spots, Moraine Lake does not have access to cell service or data, and the Icefields Parkway. So I would recommend downloading offline maps if you're going to need to navigate in those areas, or yeah, just making sure you have everything downloaded. You're not trying to stream music. You have your music downloaded onto your phone, everything that you might need when visiting those areas, because you probably won't be able to access them. And then something else that's few and far between can be gas stations. So just make sure you are always keeping an eye on your gas tank, because like, for example, the Icefields Parkway, there's like one gas station, and of course it's going to be a lot more expensive at that gas station because it's a lot of people's only choice at that point. So just, yeah, keep an eye on your gas. Make sure you know when or where the next gas station is. Okay, if you're hoping to hike, make sure you are hiking a hike that is to your skill level. There are a lot of different skill level hikes in Banff, and you might see a picture on Instagram or online that looks really beautiful, and you are just going to do this hike. That is very poor planning. I would not recommend that. Make sure you are checking the level of the hike and matching it to your skill level, because some of these hikes are crazy. Some of them need like helmets because they're scrambling, things like that. Some of them are very difficult. And so I would recommend just making sure you're choosing hikes that are to your skill level and that you are prepared for these hikes. So Banff National Park is bear country, it is cougar country, it is other animals. Like, just because they're not predators doesn't mean they're not dangerous. So make sure you have your bear spray, make sure you know how to use it. Make sure you know what to do if you come across an animal on the trail, even like an elk, because they can do some serious damage too if they perceive you as a threat. So make sure you know what you're getting into when you are going out on these trails, and make sure you are prepared, and make sure you bring a little bag for your garbage, because don't leave your garbage on the trail. And also, don't feed the animals. Don't feed squirrels, things like that, because then they become dependent on humans. They might become more aggressive with humans. You might notice that the squirrels like will try and steal your food sometimes. So just don't feed into that habit and let them stay wild, things like that. Try not to pick the wildflowers, because those are also in a really fragile alpine environment, and we want to preserve the nature that we are going to go see and enjoy. So let's just leave it where it is and enjoy it with our eyes. And we can take pictures too. Okay, I also wanted to chat about Johnston Canyon. This is a very, very, very popular spot to visit in Banff National Park. And in my opinion, if parking is full, it's not worth it. It gets so overcrowded and the trail is so skinny. You've probably seen pictures of it. There's like little ramps with railings, things like that. And it looks really cool. And it is really cool. I love Johnston Canyon, but when it is so busy at like the peak time, it is just a single file line to the waterfalls, and it's just not really enjoyable, because like you can't even pass people that are going slower. You are looking at this like you basically walk in this single file line for a decent amount of time just to get to this like overran waterfall that like everybody else is at. And then sometimes you turn around and then you're like squished because everybody's in a single file line going both ways. And I would just recommend going really, really late in the evening or really, really early for the most enjoyable experience. If you can only visit midday and you're cool with all of that, definitely, like, I don't want to stop you from going, but just know it is so crowded. One other spot I wanted to talk about is the Banff Hotsprings. So in my personal opinion, I think they are super pretty. They're super relaxing. They're super nice to visit. But some people think that they are like a natural hot spring carved into the side of a mountain, things you see on Instagram and things like that. But Banff doesn't really have hot springs like that. The Banff Hot Springs are a commercial hot spring. It's basically like this giant pool. You can look up a picture of it so you know what you're getting into at least, but I wouldn't not go. I would just know what to expect when you go. And if you're wanting to visit a natural hot spring, you'll probably have to venture into BC or go on a hike to find a hot spring like that. Okay. Something else to know about the summer season is that it is wildfire season, and in the recent years, our wildfires have been getting worse and worse, which is very sad and very unfortunate. And it can affect your holiday because the smoke can really block views of the mountains, things like that. It can make it hard to breathe because of the air quality, especially if you have breathing problems like asthma, things like that. Young kids, it might not be great for them. And if you are hoping to hike, it will make it harder. And sometimes it's not recommended to even be outside, which is difficult because a lot of what you want to do in Banff is outside. So you also can't predict a wildfire. It could happen in June, it could happen in late August. It's really hard to know. So just have those expectations. If you are camping, there could be a fire ban, so you can't have a campfire after your day. You just kind of have to sit around, no fire. In extreme cases, you might have to evacuate. Last year, Jasper had a really bad wildfire and the whole town had to evacuate, and a lot of people had to change their plans and evacuate somewhere in the middle of their holiday. So just be prepared for that. A lot of people had to cancel their vacations because of the wildfire. So cross your fingers, we have a good season, but just know you may run the risk of wildfire happening simultaneously. And even if the wildfire is not in Banff, it could be the smoky air could be coming from other places like wildfires in BC or wildfires up north, or even wildfires from the States like Montana. That smoky air sometimes does travel into Banff, and yeah, it kind of sucks. But just know you might come across that. Weather in the mountains can be quite unpredictable. Even if the weather says it's going to be hot, a rain cloud could come in and rain everywhere, especially if you're hiking at higher elevations. It is so hard to predict weather up there. So if you are hiking, make sure you're prepared. If you are driving around, just make sure you have a sweater in the car, but also make sure you have a swimsuit in the car because you might want to put on your swimsuit and jump in the lake if it is an extremely hot day out. It does get super hot as well in the summer. So have your swimsuit and then just make sure the lake is safe to swim in. But yeah, be prepared for all types of weather. Make sure you research some local cafes before you come. A lot of the businesses in Banff and Canmore are locally owned, and Lake Louise as well. So make sure you research different cafes, things you want to go to for your morning coffee, things like that. It's really nice to support local here in these smaller mountain towns and the big cities as well. Like anywhere you go, it's nice to support local. So do some looking online to check out some local cafes. Another thing people ask me when they are planning their trip is if they actually do need a car. And that question is a really big question, and it's difficult to answer because it really depends on what you want to see. Banff does have public transit. It's called Rome Transit, and it does take you to a lot of really popular places like the Banff Gondola, Lake Minnewanka, Johnston Lake, things like that. But it also doesn't cover all of Banff. So if you wanted to see something like Peyto Lake or Bow Lake, you will either need a car or you will need to hop on a day tour. As well as if you wanted to go to Moraine Lake with Rome Transit, you need to buy a super pass and buy a different bus pass for that and book in advance potentially, or be a walk-up person. That's a whole other thing for Moraine Lake, but you definitely can get around with public bus. It'll just take a little bit more planning, and you might not be able to go to every stop that you want to see. So you might have to supplement with day tours and things like that, as well as book a bus from the airport to get to Canmore or Banff, wherever you're staying, because the only way to get to there's no airport in Banff or Canmore. So you have to fly into a city and commute to the mountain town. One other thing I wanted to mention is that there are bathrooms at most viewpoints and pull-out spots and things like that. So if you have to go to the bathroom, just pull into a pullout and see if there's a little outhouse there, because there are like a ton of bathrooms all over the place in Banff National Park. So it's really easy to just pop into a bathroom at a pullout. If you're visiting in June and doing some hiking, snow can linger. Even if you're not hiking, like sometimes snow can linger. Like I think it's last year in Jasper, it snowed in June at Moraine Lake. So just know, like I said, weather can be unpredictable and sometimes you might see snow in June. And then last thing to know, I hope I covered everything. But last thing I would tell people is that if you are hoping to do some hiking or even some like pull out viewpoints, things like that. Sometimes the trail may be closed due to recent bear activity or cougar activity. And that's if they've been spotted in the area like multiple times and they're like hanging out / living in that area. They'll close the trail / area for that animal's safety as well as like people's safety. But I would recommend just checking out on AllTrails the recent hiking conditions if you are planning to do a hike. Usually people leave reviews there if they've noticed like a muddy trail, or if the trail is closed because of bear activity or cougar activity, or if they even just spotted a bear. Because just because the trail isn't closed due to animal activity doesn't mean the animals aren't there. Banff is wild. You could come across a bear. Like there was a grizzly bear at Lake Louise last year on the Lakeshore Trail. So be prepared anywhere. But if they are hanging out in that area and it's like where they're living, they will close that trail for potentially the season. One year, Rawson Lake was totally just closed because of Mama and her cubs were living there. So yeah, be flexible, because you never know what's going to happen in Banff. But that is everything I wanted to chat about and tell you, things to know before coming to Banff National Park, when you're planning your trip, things like that. If I missed anything, let me know. If you have anything else you wanted to share, let me know in the comments to kind of just help everybody plan their trip. If you have questions, let me know. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy planning your trip to Banff. I hope you enjoy your visit to Banff. And thank you so much for watching this video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.